Hello and welcome to Rise of Humanity. I'm your host Chris Karamaya, and today I'm joined by my guest and fellow podcaster Bryn Edwards. Bryn is host and founder of the show WA Real, where he interviews inspired guests with inspiring stories from Western Australia, which are delivered to help the listeners find themselves in life and to provide truly actionable content that they can use to improve their health, wealth and relationships. Bryn is a passionate individual who is on a journey of self-discovery and is moving forward with purpose through the many complexities and challenges that life throws our way. So Bryn, it's wonderful to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
So, Bryn, tell me, obviously you're in Western Australia. What does an Englishman make of Australia? I've heard good things, but tell me about it.
Oh, it's an epic place. It's very different to home, but it's still very similar to home. There's still very much an English influence here, although that's getting Americanized quite considerably. But there's a lot of things that still feel quite familiar. And it's kind of strange. I think the best way to describe it, as I described to my parents when I first said I was going to come and live here, was, that fortnight in the middle of England when, in the middle of summer in England, when weather's really good and everybody's chilled out and everyone gets on with each other. Well, it's like that for most of the year. So, it's really good. But then it's still very different as well. I live in Western Australia, which is one of the most remotest parts on the planet. Western Australia alone is 11 times the size of England, the UK, yet we only have a population of 2.3 million people. And around metropolitan Perth, we only have 1.8 million people. So the other 500,000 are out in that 11 times the size of UK size. So, we're only a few rungs up the ladder away from survival. We're very conscious about water use and things like that. Because we are right out there by ourselves. The biggest, most isolated village on the planet, Perth.
Wow. And what is it nice? Is the weather good all year round? So I definitely noticed that in England, when we have our 2 weeks of sun, it completely transforms your whole lifestyle during that period. Like I said, everyone wants to get outside and chill out and be friends. And do you get sun? Is it most of the year round then?
There is a large amount of sun. We do get a large amount of rain. When it rains, it really rains. We don't tend to get the perpetual cloudy days that I used to enjoy in England. It's either sunny or it's rainy. And it does get chilly during the winter, and all the houses here are built for summer. So we don't have things like double glazing and central heating. So as soon as it gets a bit chilly, it gets really chilly, and there's no thermostat to go and grab. So it can get chilly, but it gets really warm. I think one of the best bits I really enjoy about living in Western Australia is that there's a distinct lack of people here, and because of that, there's a lot of lack of clutter. Not just physically, but I think energetically as well. It doesn't take long to drive out of metropolitan Perth area before you are well and truly in the middle of nowhere with not many people around. And I can feel it quite quickly in that, I bought myself a four-wheel drive so I can go off the track or across beaches and stuff. And it's very easy after a couple of hours of driving away from the metropolitan area to be in the middle of nowhere where you're very, very unlikely to encounter anyone. And so it's good to be able to go out with, not just very close friends or just by yourself, as I often do. Just go by myself and get away from the rest of the human energetic clutter.
Yeah, I was going to say, you notice the difference in energy in the places where obviously there's much less people, much more space, you notice that energy?
I personally do, yeah. Earlier this year I went over to Sydney, and I could it wasn't just hectic in terms of the number of people that were there, it also felt energetically hectic. And then when I do come back home to England, that's 65 million people living on an island that's the 11th the size of the piece of London, the state that I'm normally in. So yeah, that in itself, you can feel it. You can feel it. You know, there's a lot of evidence out there that we are perpetually putting energy out, whether it's from our heart or transmitting it from our head. And there's a lot of people with a lot of cluttered thought, cluttered energy, and that's just perpetually there. Yet here it's not difficult to get away from it, and you notice it. You either notice it while you're away, or you notice it when you return, and there's a presence of something again that's just been absent for a while.
Yeah, it's interesting. So talk to me about the ocean, because I listened to your introductory podcast episode, and it sounds like it's something that's playing a big part in your life and your development, and you talk about the sports as well. So tell me about that.
Yeah, it's interesting you should pick up on that. The ocean is I'm very drawn to it, yet the level to which I'm drawn to it is also far eclipsed by my my fear and wariness of it. When I first came here, I was extraordinarily scared of it because it's just big and scary, and it can take lives really quickly. So, the ocean alone, let alone what's in it. I've been a keen swimmer for quite a few years. I used to swim. I do a lot of open water swimming in the UK, and when I came here, I was drawn to swimming in the ocean. We have an island that's 20 kilometres off the coast of Perth, and each year there's an event, a swim race over there. You have a boat and a kayaker with you, and you can do it in a team of 4, team of 2, or by yourself. And I was always kind of drawn to it, and I couldn't quite work it out. And several years I participated in a team of 4 or a team of 2. But then 2 years ago, start of last year, I undertook the challenge to go and swim it all by myself. So it's 6.5 hours of swimming. And that took 5 months of training to get to that point, and a lot of time in the ocean. And during that time, my relationship with it changed and evolved. It became almost like a metaphor for your greater, bigger unconscious. It's big, it's scary, there's a lot of things in there. But after a period of time, I became at one and at ease in it. And you start to delayer your fear. There's a lot of stuff in there. We do have, large fish with teeth that come and take people, and that happens. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm not scared of big fish and what have you. They're extremely scary. But what I found was that I was getting scared of being scared of seeing one, and then you get scared of being scared of being scared of seeing one or encountering one, and it's very quick. I notice we become very quick to layer on fear, so we get scared of being scared. And the more time I was spending in the ocean, training and swimming, and the further the actual race or the event, you go perpendicular from the beach. All my training was parallel to the beach. I'd go up and down the coast. But you start to just swim further and further and further out, and you become more at ease in it. And you start to notice after a period of time, you go through a period of the first 15, 20 minutes of your brain's all busy, and it's coming up with 101 reasons why you shouldn't continue swimming and all that sort of stuff. And then it calms down, and then you become at peace in it. And then you start to feel... You start to feel when stuff actually does pop up in your head that's just like mental chatter fear, or where sometimes you do actually think, oh, hello, I do feel ill at ease. And sometimes that, you may just have been checked out by something. And, because a lot of fish navigate not necessarily by eyes, but by electromagnetic pulses and waves and what have you. So, and we're producing that from our heart all the time. So sometimes you do feel slightly ill at ease, and it's like, oh, I think I might have just been checked out, but you don't know. But yeah, there's a lot of that delayering fear and becoming grounded in it. And being in salt water is a very grounding experience. So yeah, it was a fantastic experience, and I felt hugely grounded, hugely in touch with myself, and yeah, a lot of things just opened out over those 4 or 5 months of training.
Yeah. So do you feel that it's kind of benefited you on a bigger kind of whole life level, facing your fears?
Yeah. In addition to having experience in the ocean, I also had. I was also very redundant at that point from a job that I had. It's oil and gas. There's quite a boom here in Western Australia, and I, like many others, with the fall in the barrel price, suddenly found ourselves without work, which right at the start of December, which here in Western Australia, because it's summer and there's Christmas going on, December and January is not a great time to go and find a job. In fact, I was pretty much told by everyone just to pull the stunts and stop. So what happened was I found myself in December and January with money in the bank. I could survive. It was summer, but there was no point looking for a job. And I wasn't on holiday. I was at home. I was still going about my life, but all of a sudden there was this big hole in my working day, which was work. So I think it was the second week of being unemployed that I was working on the Monday and thought, right, what am I going to do today? and then it was like, well, what would you normally do? I'd go to work. And it was like, geez, work takes up a lot of your time, doesn't it? And it just had this realization. And then another little voice suddenly went, you don't even enjoy it though. I was like, oh, far out. And had almost like this existential crisis for about 3 to 4 days of coming to terms, or deprogramming as I now look at it, in terms of the program of work, and how little by little we take on board work and busyness, and how that sucks us in and consumes us, and we give a lot of power to that. And just how much time it takes up, and how much time it takes you away from thinking about what you really could be doing. Now, I'm not advocating here that we all just chuck jobs away and we don't work. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about here is how slowly but surely we accept compromise, and within our daily lives, certainly with work, you suddenly go for that job because it's being paid a bit more. But is it really you? Is it really what you want to do? And we always I found in my experience, you go through your 20s and your 30s, and you're following a career path and a corporate career path, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then it was just, boom, it stopped. And I had the opportunity to sit and think about this, or quite dramatically deprogram from it. And then it got me thinking about other programs that take hold on us, that keep us busy and away from considering some of the bigger aspects of being alive and participating in the purpose of what we're here for. I started considering about what's our relationship with death, and how does that impact us? A lot of us, if you think about death, if you're running the program in your head that at the end of when you die, then this is it, well, you're going to be shitting yourself every day and clinging on for dear life. If you think you go on beyond this in some sort of energetic manner, I'm not saying, whether you go to heaven, hell, this, that, and the other. If you just believe you go on, then you're going to chill out a bit more and enjoy it, because you know that you're here to enjoy it, and then you'll be on to somewhere else. Now, I'm not trying to get into a bigger what's right, what's wrong. What I'm saying is we do have programs, we do have sets of beliefs, we have taken these on board, and I'm becoming more and more aware of that. And what I came to in that existential sort of crisis of 4 days was a realization that you can either run the program, or the program's going to run you. And you can get in and look at it, in terms of how is it structured for lots of people, and how is it structured for yourself personally. And then ask yourself, is it working for you? Is the situation that you're in, is the beliefs that you hold about this situation working for you? And if it's not, then let's have a look at the beliefs. Let's have a look at the program. So if you take death, for instance, if you're happy to run the program, that at the end of this life, that's it, then hopefully that will work for you in your everyday life. If you want to run the program, well, I'm here, and then when I leave this place, I'll go to another place, and energetically or whatever, and my job here is to learn some stuff, then that means your approach to life fundamentally is going to change. And it's, which program do you want to run? I'm not saying one's right. I'm not saying one's wrong. I'll find the answer to that out shortly after I leave this mortal coil. It'll be difficult to come back and chat to your listeners and say, I was right. Yeah. But it's not about right or wrong. Because I think it's all of them. It is kind of which program works for you. And the challenge I'm finding, which became bluntly apparent when I had this period of, in the end, that period of unemployment went for 4 months. So I was having this incredible physical meditative experience of swimming for hours in the ocean, which was delayering fears and being very grounded because it's in salt water as well. But it didn't just stop there. I was given the time and space to actually reconsider who I was. I just come out of what could best described as a midlife crisis. I think in episode 1, I described myself as a poster boy for a cliche mid-crisis, affair with a younger woman and all of that sort of stuff. So, I was well on the journey to having some sort of existential crisis. And, I look, whilst it was rocky, I look back now and I thank my lucky stars for that. For that thing to have happened, that situation. But I really started to consider these programs and started to think about them much more deeply and how they affect us. So
it's incredible. Like so many things that you said there that I picked up on. I mean, for one, I definitely relate to what you're saying about the leaving the job thing, and that while I wouldn't just recommend someone to go and leave a job. I think if you do find yourself in that position though, and you're kind of tuned into the universe, or you're ready for something, what will ensue in the universe invariably will always fill that time with something profound. It's not a coincidence that you keep leaving jobs. I mean, for me, I've always wanted to do more than just a job, and I was kind of forcing myself to fit into a box of like this career path, and I kept leaving the jobs. And the last time I left, a few months ago, was the time that it all finally dropped into place. And I just left, and I started this podcast, and things are taking off incredibly. Yeah, but it's about
because what you're ultimately doing, or what it sounds like you're doing, is you're following your highest enthusiasm. You're following the frequency with which you follow. Pardon me. I take my influences from all over the place, anywhere, and I have what's been described as a certain element of mental spaciousness, which means I can take an idea in and look at it from lots of different angles before I decide whether it's going to work for me or not. Yeah. And it can be wild and wacky and all sorts of stuff, and the sources of information can be all over the place. One of the things that's really resonated with me is there's a guy called Daryl Anker over in America, and pardon me, he channels an entity called Bashar. Now, I'm not going to get into whether the channeling thing's great or not, or this, that, and the other, but if you put that bit to one side and just listen to what comes out of the bloke's mouth when he enters this state, it's for me, it's quite strong. It's I've showed it to some of my friends, and they just find it hard work. And I can understand why it's hard work, because it's very confronting. And one of the major themes out of it is, we all vibrate, we all have a signature frequency, and we may go away from that, but ultimately you'll come back. And when you follow your core vibrational frequency, then you're working in line with the universe, and the universe is conspiring to work with you. And how do you know where your core vibrational frequency is? Well, it's when you feel alive and impassioned, and you get pins and needles on your arms, and I'm feeling that just even talking about it.
Yeah.
And when you work in line with that, then things start to fall in place, but not necessarily fall in place in the way in which you expect it to. I mean, your former guest, Peter Sage, puts it beautifully as stress is when you are holding on to a perception of how you think life should be, but not necessarily looking at the rest of the world and allowing it to work its magic to conspire to look after you. I mean, as he said, run the program of the universe is conspiring to support you. And then instead of sitting there and going, well, it's going to support me by doing this, I'm only going to end up with my house, the house that I want to live in, because I'm going to win the lottery. No, set your intent that you want to be in it. You want your own home, place where you feel physically safe and secure, and then chuck it out there, and then just let the universe work its magic. It might come in a different way. It might be in a different place. It might look a lot different. But set that out there. And if you work within you in your core vibrational frequency by following your passion, and deep down what it is. We might tell ourselves convenient truths and lies that take us off, and I think it should be like this and it should be like that. But that's just the program. That's the external program. And when you, in a situation, and this is another great thing, and I mentioned it earlier on, when you're in a situation that's not necessarily working for you, go back and track back and go, what beliefs about myself am I holding on to which makes this situation okay? And if you and as soon as you let that belief rise up, if it is in line with your core self, it'll stay. If it's not, it'll disappear. But you have to bring it up. If you leave things at an unconscious level, then they will control you. If you actively pursue the things that lie within you at an unconscious level, and work out what are the things that are not giving me necessarily what I want, or taking me in the direction I think, or not giving me that, but then if you dive in and find them, when you find them, they'll go.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Completely agree with what you're saying. And it's you already know what you're supposed to do and who you are. It's just you forget, and there's all this clutter and baggage in the way, which confuses you. And I don't know what to do with my life, and I keep making the wrong decisions. But the truth is, I believe that you already do know. You just got all this, or as you call them, programs. You got everything just blocking your vision so much that it leads you down this completely wacky path until you finally discover who you are.
Absolutely. I had a guest on WA Real, and look, to be clear about WA Real, I'm 42. As I said, I've been open and transparent about my little journey in the last 4 or 5 years. Poster boy of midlife crisis, left very much on my own, didn't really understand what was going on. And, my target audience for WA Real is people between 35 and latter 40s who are going through some sort of change, not necessarily the same way as I did. But it's there to listen to stories about how people have made changes and what have in your life. And, I had a guy last week on the show who, immediately was talking about how you take on board these programs right from an early age, and you take them on for your mum and your dad and society, this, that, the other, and and we carry on. And in that time, you're trying to understand who you are and where you fit in the world, and almost like a separated little entity from the rest of the world. And so in doing that, you start to define yourself in terms of, I am this, but I'm not that, or I am that, but not this. And in doing that, you're putting a lot of stuff away when really you're everything. You are both, good and bad. We like to think, I'm a good man, I'm an outstanding member of the community. Then how is it then all of a sudden you can do something and deep down it's not right. And you are all things. So you put yourself, and this is how, as Jung puts it, this is how your shadow starts to appear. And you're putting stuff in this box, and you're putting them as a box. You think, I'm not like that. I'm not like that. I'm not like that. And it takes energetic, emotional, physical, spiritual energy to keep stuff in the box and keep yourself as this. And then I believe that you get to a point in life where there's so many programs, there's so many scripts, there's so much stuff that you've put away in the box, and there's just not enough energy left to keep the box closed with all the stuff in it. And that's when your shadow bursts up, and then you start to do different things, and stuff that that weren't interesting to you one day are suddenly are the next, and stuff that isn't anymore. And it gets really scary, because all of a sudden you're facing up to a whole lot of stuff you've probably not even told yourself, or dared to admit to yourself. And we do it, we tell convenient truth and lies. And that's a burst out, and it can be untidy, and it can be scary. And, one of the things I want to do is just get it out there that this is a little journey, this is a little path, and this is part of that journey and path. And I think if I could have one outcome, from WA? Well, it's people start to understand that particular part of the journey and understand some of the mechanics and how, it'd be lovely if we all worked on our core vibrational frequency from the moment we come out of our mother's womb, and then that's it. It just goes like that, and then this never happens. But shit, that would be boring, wouldn't it, Chris?
Yeah. Trial by fire.
To be honest, it would be boring.
Yeah.
And so this happens. And so I think if we can understand it, then we can understand that out the back of all that scariness that erupts is a huge amount of great wonder and untapped resource. And once you get past that fear, there's a huge amount of psychic and spiritual energy that you can draw upon, and you can start to enjoy yourself, and you start to become a more integrated whole person. And I had a fantastic common sense or easygoing talk with the head of the Jungian Society here, and we talked about how the second half of life is very much integrating yourself and becoming a whole person, as Carl Jung put it, and it's learning to love your shadow and learning to love who you are, even when you shine and even when you don't shine, and being quite appreciative of that, and from that, connecting with your heart and then going forwards and being brave enough to follow that, even when it runs completely contrary to all the scripts and programs that you're taking on board. So I think there's really that tipping point anywhere between 35 and 45. It can happen before, it can happen after. And, people try and ignore it. Mm. And if they do, then, I think they put that day of reckoning off a bit further, and you can do that with, substance abuse. You can do it with wonky stuff. You can do it by keep telling yourself, different. You can tell yourself different stories to keep yourself in a different place. And, some of the decisions I suddenly found myself making forced me to confront a lot of stuff about myself. Now, I think a lot of us keep ourselves super busy. In fact, I've almost coined this phrase recently that busyness is almost like the crack or the meth of the everyday person. It's so addictive. It's so easy to be busy, not necessarily productive, but busy, because then that will stop us from facing up to the hard truths of who we are and what sits in our heart and where we're going. Mm-hmm. So watch that space. I'm going to try and I've got to refine that, but busyness being the drug of the everyday person.
I can relate to that as well, because that was one of the things before I kind of quit that career that wasn't serving me anymore. One of the things I used to like about it at the time was it, even though I knew I wasn't serving my highest purpose at all, it made me feel comfortable knowing that I could just go to work for 12 hours, come back and just do a bunch of work, come back and get paid for it. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm being productive. But when you really stop and look at yourself, it's like, yeah, but I'm not really doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's going to run out. That day is going to come where you're like, no, I can't do this. And I have to face the fear and go and just take it to the next level.
Absolutely. I've since starting the podcast and putting it out, friends and friends of friends are starting to come and talk to me and say, I just had 2 weeks holiday and I couldn't sleep. All this stuff's coming out, and I've got this urge to draw, but I haven't done drawing for like 20 years. And some of the stuff you talk about in your podcast, it's starting to come a bit. I'm starting to get my head around it, and I'm actually getting what you're saying. And some weeks it's discussions with people like the head of the Jungian Society. The next week it's with a lady who was in a job that was making her ill, and then she wanted to understand how her gut works better and all of that, and she's made the transition to making that her business. And we talked about how do you balance off, as soon as it's very easy to suddenly go, oh, I think this might be my higher purpose, but then is my higher purpose still going to pay for the kids to be at school and the mortgage and the cars and this, that, and the other? And then, so we had a really good 20-minute discussion in the middle of the whole podcast as to how did you make that change? Sat down with the husband, went through expenditure, realized what we could get rid of, what we could do, how we're going to manage expectations, and realized it was, for a period of time. But at the end of that period of time, the husband was, going to end up with 10x the wife that he was going to have before. So, why be in a relationship with someone
Yeah.
miserable zone. So when, you just have to suck it up and do things differently for 2 or 3 years, but out the back, you're going to get someone on the journey towards their highest potential, and in that, giving them an opportunity to shine and develop and share that journey with them, and you're just going to get so much more back in terms of the partner that you're with. So that was a fascinating story. So yeah, it's people who are making transitions. It's looking at a bit of almost like the framework, a bit of psychology around it. It's looking at lots of different things, and not everybody can kind of get what I'm up to, but in my mind it is. I've got a little framework in my head of how I think things work, which I'm sort of articulating here. And I'm going out and testing it and adding things to it and revealing great stories at the same time for people to enjoy and hopefully take stuff away from.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There is a process that I feel, even though it's not crystal clear to humanity as a whole. I think there is a process of how life works and how you're supposed to progress and taking leaps of faith and creating space in your life for what you want, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I hear spiritual teachers saying as well that the path to enlightenment is as much as it's about learning, it's very much about letting go of stuff that you already are kind of there. You just need to let go of all that junk and that baggage that's holding you back. And you mentioned earlier, it gets to the point where you just can't hold on to it anymore and you have to let it go. So I think there is a process emerging. The world is waking up, and eventually it will become, people really step into their power and be like, yeah, and do this, and this will invariably improve my life.
I agree entirely with you. I mean, let's take Bashar talks a lot about not just the beliefs, but the labels and the definitions that we hold. So let's take, for instance, this growing industry called self-development and what have you. And again, your previous guest, Peter Sage, he loves to have a conversation around this.
Yeah.
But let's run the program. Let's work out what that actually means, self-development. Self-development means that I don't have what I need because I need to develop it. So I need to develop myself and expand it. Well, let's just change that for a minute. And instead of calling it self-development, let's call it self-revealing. Let's work on the program that you've already got everything you need. Okay, it's all in there. And instead of learning something, you're just decluttering to get to that. Run that program now. How do you view everything if you run that as a program? I have everything that I need. All I have to do is try and find it in myself. So now it becomes an exciting journey, doesn't it? Yeah. It's not like, oh, I haven't got this, I haven't got that. We're not coming from a place of scarcity anymore. We're coming from a place of abundance. And abundance here is not having tons of money in the bank. Abundance is having what you need to do when you want. Having what you need to do what you want when you want to do it. And having that coming from that place of abundance, if you have everything in you, then that becomes an exciting journey. And we're self-revealing, aren't we?
Yeah.
So
it's a huge weight off. As soon as you say it, it's like, I can breathe.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, and again, self-revealing, you go back to my period of time of being unemployed. What happened? I had a delayering, I had a deprogramming of work. And what happens when people go on holiday? All of a sudden, that busyness crack, that busyness meth is, you're taken off it, you're forced to sit on the beach, or you're marching around on the beach or whatever, but after a while you slow down. And then these layers come apart. And what happens? You start to reveal, you start to get in touch with stuff. Your focus has gone from that and it's coming back out again. It's coming more broad and you feel it, you're back in touch with stuff. I was really lucky this year, and don't get me wrong, this is a daily challenge for me. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm some enlightened soul, because I certainly am not. But I was lucky enough this year to go and take a holiday and go to Sri Lanka with my girlfriend for 3 weeks. And one of the things we both enjoyed the most was getting back and just sitting on buses for like 4 or 5 hours, saying next to nothing to one another, looking out the window. And geez, I went everywhere. Not just on a bus. I went everywhere because all of a sudden it's all delayering out all the stresses and strains of everything in the world. So I've gone to Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka is one of these great confronting places where it doesn't run on time. The internet works one day, it doesn't on the next. When you get the bus will come when the bus comes, and it's just a great experience. And it's lovely, safe and clean. But it has all of that with it. And you're sitting on the bus and you're watching the world go by and you're delayering, and all of a sudden, like, do you know what? I forgot about this. I forgot about that. That bit, this and that being, how I feel in my heart, how I feel about stuff. And it took me back to, did some traveling when I was 20s, and I used to love sitting, looking out the window. And, some people call it meditation. Some people sit on the bus, da, 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 da. A lot of it is just being still and coming off the busyness coming off the busyness crack, and allowing that to delayer and go to one side, and then letting that reveal come up. Yeah. Because like I said, it's all there.
Yeah. You just have to create space for it to come through. Yeah, absolutely. That's why traveling's such a good thing, or even going away 3 weeks somewhere a bit more remote. It creates that space for it to flow in. It's the same for me when I went to South America 6 months. I had some really awesome realizations there, and it took 3 months. Took 3 months for it really to start settling in. So it took the whole 6 months, but it never would have happened. And I'd say it accelerated my life path and progress by a couple of years easily, just by creating that space. And it doesn't have to be a 6 month trip, but it can be scary to take that leap and honor yourself in that way. But I think if people listening, if you do that, it will transform your life in some way. Definitely.
Absolutely. You open yourself up to new stuff. You open yourself up to new ways of thinking. Most importantly, you open yourself up to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's I've just been thinking, because you mentioned a couple of things, like the guy that does the channeling that you were listening to, and you talked about frequency and that kind of thing as well. And I think I'd be interested to hear your view on it. Obviously, you're kind of more aware maybe than the average person about these things, maybe the deeper aspects of the universe. But the way I see it, and I heard this interesting metaphor. You talk about from a spiritual teacher, and he said, if I don't know how many years ago, but he said if you heard, for example, saw someone like 20 years ago jogging down the street, you'd be like, what the hell's that person doing? Like, are they running away from a tiger or something? And then he said a few years later, you'd be like, oh, I see a few more people doing that now. That doesn't seem as strange. And then a few years later, there's loads of people running around down the streets now. Oh, what are they doing? And then a few years later, you are considered weird if you don't look after yourself and you don't look after your physical health. And he said that's the way that spirituality is going. And that's the same if you talked about meditation a few years ago, you'd be like, oh, you're weird. But now it's pretty much
it's very mainstream, isn't it?
And he's saying that all that channeling stuff and all the non-physical, the frequency, the energy, all of that in the next probably 50 years is going to become the norm. So
and that could only be a good thing.
Yeah, it's
it could only be a good thing. I agree with you. Again, all this, our ability to draw down energy, draw down ideas, draw down whatever, access various stuff. Again, let's work on the principle of self-revealing. We all do it. We all have intuition. We all have a sense of conscience. We all have a voice that at some point says, oh, I should do this. If you take on board, Jung's great theory of synchronicity, that certain things happen at certain times. And again, if you're operating on your passion, then synchronicity will start to occur more frequently.
Yeah.
Now, does it occur more frequently, or do you notice it more frequently? Is the universe always conspiring to look after you? I've once read that God or higher being or all that is must unconditionally love us, because He allows us to conditionally love Him and ourselves.
Yeah.
Let's go off on this amazing big adventure.
Yeah.
And it's where we have to go off and through the conditionality and come back to find ourselves unconditionally. And I think all of this, more and more and more, we're able to have discussions like this. I still think we've got a long way to go. Mm-hmm. And, I'm loving this experience to be able to talk to you about it right now. I went on a course not so long ago, actually about a year ago. So I've been a Reiki practitioner for about 16 years now. Oh, and I went to just a workshop for the day. And the guy put out right from the start is, how often when you bump into a friend, do you say, you normally say, oh, how you going? How's your job? Or this, that, and the other. Yeah. How often do you lead with a conversation which goes with, so how's your spiritual development going today? Yeah. You chuck that in, start a conversation with that, start a telephone conversation like that, see what happens. I mean, people probably go with it with you now because of what we're doing on the podcast, and you in particular. But check that one in and see how people go. Who knows? Let's fast forward 20, 30 years. That might be the way we go. How's your spiritual development? How's your journey going?
How's your energy today?
How's your energy today? And that would be a good thing. Again, let's run the program. If we were all interested in it and we all started with that, how do we act and how do we work? It'd be brilliant. But I agree entirely with what your observation that you make, that more and more and more it's becoming acceptable. And, with the proliferation of podcasts, internet, YouTube, stuff like that, the fact that we're not constrained to mass media and the nicely tailored view of things. We're not constrained to that. We can go to hundreds of outlets to get our information, and we can sit back and go, does this resonate with me or does it not? And if it doesn't, well, it's great. Don't bother with it. And if it does, well, I'm going to consume more of this. And again, I'm a big advocate in feed yourself good stuff. That's not necessarily food. That's also, that goes down to media as well.
Yeah.
Does it serve you? If watching the news, if you enjoy watching the news, and then at the end of it, having watched the 6 o'clock news for 20 minutes, if you enjoy that sense of anxiety that you get at the end of it because you think Donald Trump's going to chuck a nuclear bomb on North Korea, if you enjoy that anxiety, then that's brilliant. And you've chosen what the media to consume wisely for you, and that works for you. If it doesn't, if you want something more empowering or this, that, and the other, then there's plenty of other places to go and look for. Chuck it into Google, chuck it into YouTube, come on iTunes. Listen to your podcast, listen to mine.
Yeah,
listen to Brian's.
Yeah, it's a much better way to live, isn't it? And it's
I love it.
Yeah, and it's disempowering consuming that media. I mean, if you want to do it, then do it. But when you sit there and just get angry, you're not aware that you're actually perpetuating that whatever's been put on the news. Because if you sit there and get angry and then you go and pass that on to the people around you and you just create more negative energy, it doesn't make any sense. It's self-fulfilling prophecy.
You'll be putting it out there. You yourself will take that message and you will broadcast that out there, whether it's through your interactions, the energy you put out. I talked at the start of this about living in Western Australia and getting less energetic clutter from people. I honestly believe, you get far away from people and you get the opportunity to deal with your own signature and what you're putting out. It just, this continual anxiety, fear, that gets pumped out. And, again, I was lucky to interview a chap who's a former CEO of West Australian Business News here, a very successful little media company, and we got to talk about how media works. And he was explaining how it's not so much a big, conspiratorial malice thing. It's more the rules of the game shape the companies that you get, and there's essentially two companies. Or essentially two business models. One is you produce content and you ask people to subscribe and pay for it, or you produce content, you make it free, and you're paid for by advertising. Now, if you subscribe, then who you're writing for, who you're producing content for, you're producing it for your subscribers. And if if you don't give them what they want, as it were, then they're going to vote with their feet and go somewhere else. If they're giving free content that's based on sponsorship and clicks to and this, that, and the other, then what are you going to be doing? Well, you're writing for the advertisers. You're going to be producing scandalous stuff, clickbait shit, which is going to, draw attention to the adverts. So again, so make a conscious choice here. Where do you want to consume your media from? And it's things like that the conversations I like to get into and capture on WA Real. So so you make a conscious choice if you want to go and do it. I mean, I used to consciously, when I was back in England, I used to consciously enjoy going and buying a broadsheet and buying the Sunday Sport, right? Okay, loads of tits in it and stuff like that, and scandalous stories and this, that, and the other. But I knew exactly what I was buying, and I did it for a laugh. Right. You go and buy the Sunday Sport because you think you're getting cutting edge journalism, then you might be in a situation. You're going and buying McDonald's because you think you're getting a hearty, nutritious meal that's actually giving you everything that you need to, sustain yourself as a human being. I still go and have the odd Big Mac, and I know what I'm buying. You know, so I'm not being holier than thou. It's just I'm, making a conscious decision.
Yeah, so, having awareness of what you're doing. Yeah. Awesome. So what kind of other things do you do to ensure that you don't kind of fall into those low vibrational kind of states? I mean, avoiding media is a big one. I mean, I know are you still doing like the water sports? I mean, meditation, anything like that, just to try and keep you grounded. I'm assuming obviously your podcast is helping you a lot as well.
The podcast itself, as you'll know yourself, Chris, it's a beast that comes into your life, but and it can take up a lot of time, but it's just a great project of passion, and you get to meet different and interesting people, and the opportunity for me to connect and have a real conversation is just awesome, and I get such a thrill out of it and such a buzz. I interviewed somebody yesterday between who was it, about 6:30 and 8:30 last night, and geez, I was struggling to get sleep before midnight because I was still buzz. Yeah, absolutely wired. So that opportunity to have real deep conversations, not just transactional conversations, but relational conversations, is awesome. Look, like I said, I fall into practices and out of practices. I did lots and lots of swimming, and then I just swam myself, but I tired my body out after 18 months of really solid swimming, because I did the swim to Rottnest by myself, and then the following year I did it with my girlfriend, and by that point my body was just knackered. So I went away from it, and I'm just actually getting back into going in the ocean again and really thoroughly enjoying that. So you come in and out of it. I used to meditate quite a bit, and then I just fell off the perch, as we do. And then since going to Sri Lanka, I make a point of at least most days having, at the very bare minimum, 7 minutes just sitting with my eyes closed and just put the little stopwatch on and leave it there. So there's those things. I'm really into walking at the moment, just in nature, and if given half the opportunity, no shoes on whatsoever. Again, it's a luxury of living in Australia, because it is warmer, and also people don't look at you weird if you walk around without shoes on. Whereas I remember doing it once or twice back in England, and people were like, "Oh God, can't you afford shoes?" So they're really key things, and I think it's doing whatever I can do to be present. Steady.
It sounds like you're doing a lot of different things, because some people, they find that one thing, like, or meditation or breath work or something like that, and they're like, it just serves them for life, and they just latch onto it, and then maybe they end up teaching it as well. But there's another kind of way it works, which is kind of that way for me as well, to a degree, is that you just, when you're kind of in tune with yourself and what you need, you chop and change and try loads of different things, and it's like, oh, this thing's serving me really well for a few weeks, and then you're like, oh, I don't really feel the need to do that anymore, and then something else will flow in. Is that what you're finding?
I do. But then at the same time, one of the things that's popping up for the moment is taking stock of a lot of things that I've done. And so one of the little tasks I've got ahead of me in the next few weeks is just to sit down and work out what are some of the things that I've done over the last 5, 10, 15 years that have really made me feel like at my peak, and then just almost make a catalogue of it for myself, and then start to go, okay, so how can I weave those in? Because one of the things, much like yourself sounding there, Chris, is that you can have lots of things, and then you move to the next one, and you move to the next one, and there is that passion, and there is that little energetic pull to a new thing. But I think sometimes just going back and taking stock of what you've done, and then seeing how you could, I don't know, just make a regular pattern out of doing different things. But again, patterns are another little trap there, aren't they? You know, I've got friends who are addicted to exercise. You know, if they don't get their exercise buzz between 5:30 and 7, because we're quite an early waking up area here. If they don't get their buzz between 5:30 and 7 in the morning, then they're shit. I'm real grumpy. And you know, I've had to learn how to. Some days you're on, and some days, well, I'll just go for a walk, or I'll just get up and be in the house and be present, and maybe not get that energetic. But so I think there's a real balance in there in terms of, having that structure which will set you free, but then also leaving enough of the door open in that structure for new stuff to come in, which everybody's other stuff has to go out. So, but yeah, really fine balance, really hard work.
Yeah. One of the things
I think, as long as you're consciously doing something, and you're evolving and expanding. Yeah,
it's all pushing you to grow at the end of the day. It's just kind of, it's just discovery, isn't it, really?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you mentioned about taking stock of what's worked for you. Another thing that I've kind of found to be important recently is also measuring and tracking your progress, and actually stopping and looking at how far you've come, and also the things that you've actually enjoyed in like the last week and they've made you happy. And like, because it's so easy to get so caught up in growing and progressing, you forget everything that has made you happy up to now. And one of the things like Peter Sage talks about is he kept a magic moments list while he was in prison.
Yeah, I remember hearing that on your podcast. Yeah, and he had hundreds from being in prison, and I actually thought that's pretty mega.
Yeah,
that's pretty mega. I mean, I do journal, not every day. My journal is more an expansion of ideas or things that are resonating with me, and I find that that in itself can help to expand ideas. But actually the magic moment bit is pretty awesome. I like that, because in it, if nothing else, it actually cements what a great occasion something was, or cements what a great day something was. And I do like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously you're in the process of taking stock of what you've done over the last 5, 10 years and stuff that's worked for you. I mean, but looking back at some of the challenges of your life, I mean, especially you talked about the midlife crisis period and all these big things. I mean, what's your take on them? I mean, I suppose Peter Sage is a perfect example of taking a positive view of how, things that seem really, adverse and challenging, they're actually there to support you, and that everything's kind of opportunity to grow if you look at it in the right way. I mean, what's that look like for you? What have you kind of realizations have you had over the last few years?
On one level, everything that's transpired is meant to be. You get those questions about, if you go back to your 20-year-old self and give yourself some advice, what would it be? And it's kind of like, well, if I did that, then would I be here? Would I like to be somewhere else? And if I would like to be somewhere else, well, why don't I just get bloody well go and do it? I think there have been times when life's been shit and life's been hard, and it's just like, and just, when one thing happens, then it gets cascaded by a number of other things, and you just sit there going, when am I going to get a break? There is a path, there is a journey. You can try and stray away from it, and you make choices, and the universe is conspiring to help you. But like I said at the start, seldom do we come out of mum's womb and then just live our highest passion throughout the whole of life. That's not the purse, but that would just be boring. Again, the guy who does the channeling has said, taking a sojourn on Earth, our lifetime on Earth is a masterclass of overcoming limitations. And I really like that. And it kind of actually makes me want to go. It's like, this is the graduation school. This is the graduation event of taking what you've learned and overcoming limitation. And it sits well with that self-revealing. And so, looking back over it, there have been times when I've sold myself short. I've not been honest with myself. I've not been honest with other people. That's been one of the things I've been most guilty with, putting everyone's thoughts and feelings before my own. And in that, not only putting people's thoughts and feelings before my own, but doing that at the expense of actually understanding what my thoughts and feelings actually are on a situation. Because the very first sort of perception of that has been like, well, it feels like if I go further with this, then it's really going to be different to what everybody else is thinking. So I just won't even investigate. So I'll please everybody else and then deny myself at the same time. So it's not even like I'm really getting into. So I used to be very, very guilty of doing that. And I became, from going to a boys' boarding school at a very early age, I became very adept at fitting in, to the point of not drawing attention to myself and playing by the rules. I wasn't always a goody two shoes. I was very much a non-conformist at times, but I was never a rebel. But I always knew what to do to fit in and not draw attention to myself, and move through and make the best of a situation rather than actually sitting back. And that carried on later in life, rather than sitting back and going, is this actually working for me? I'm now no longer at school. I have a bit more say over what's going on. So, but it's taken me a while to get to some points of my realization, which I've noticed other people have got to earlier in their lives. But doing it at 42, maybe I'll learn the lessons deeper, and execute the lessons better. I don't know. It's my journey. It's been fun.
Awesome. So as we begin to just wrap things up here, just tell us a little bit about your plans for your podcast, WA Real, and where we can find out more about it and stuff like that.
Yeah, so it's on iTunes, and I got a little Facebook page where you can find me in my very colourful red waistcoat. Which is a lot of people ask me about that. If anything, it's a pair of shorts and a bright red waistcoat. And I look, casual but very smart, which is kind of me. And I'm paying my guests respect by dressing up smart, and they're giving me their time. So you can check it out there. And all my interviews so far I've recorded on video, but in the not too distant future I will put them up on YouTube. And they need a bit of fine tuning and editing, but look, at the moment, it's just getting out there and doing it. I've got great ideas of flushing out a tribe of people that I can bring together, and we can start to discuss things that are coming up from listening to the podcast. And the great thing is I have a bit of coaching background in my past, as well as being a business consultant. I think that's where my intrinsic interest of how people do stuff. So one of the nice things is when I start to bring people together, I'd love to have like a focus group type thing. Immediately, because of the podcast people can sort of say, well, this person resonated with me because this was coming up, and when they said this, then this. So immediately we've got a nice reference point, and it can be a reference point not just between me and the person, but for me and the group, or them in the group, sorry. And so yeah, I really want to flesh out a tribe and just hang around people who want to take their lives more seriously, have fun, but want to take life more seriously and want to take more active control and take action and be all that they can be. So yeah, I wanted to get out and meet more interesting people and pick their stories. That's starting to happen. I'd like to think people start ringing me up and want to come on the show. We'll see when that happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got quite a few other people. I've got quite a few people who willing to come on the show. So I'm at episode 12 at the moment, and certainly I've got people booked in all the way up to 2022 at the moment, which is great. So yeah. I just want to keep going, and I want to see where it takes me. Already I've been introduced to stuff, and you may well find this, Chris. The more you interact with these people, the more they rub off on you, and what's made them compelling people to speak to then wears off on you, and you take little stuff, and it might not be so obvious to start with, but I'm starting to find myself look at things slightly differently, and it's because I've been in the presence of these people and we've shared a space and something's happened. And so I want to keep on going. I want it to continue to be an enjoyable experience for the guests. I'm making a point of making sure that they're in not a better state, but they're in a happier place than where they were before. And I've already had several people say, it's not often I get to tell my whole story over an hour and 20 minutes, and nobody interrupt, and only someone would be interested. So I think there's a lot of almost therapeutic experience for them. And and if that can then translate to more people taking action, coming together, or even if they do it individually, obviously because it's on the internet, it's got a global follow. But if more people in Western Australia can start to take action, and then we can really start to increase the vibe of Western Australia and send out a signal to the rest of the world. From the people that we have here who are awesome, and maybe they just need to realize just how awesome they are. So,
it sounds like you really got a nice vision for the future. So wish you the best of luck with that, with the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on today, Bryn, sharing your knowledge and your story. Really appreciate it. So thank you.
You're very welcome, Chris. And when you come down to Western Australia, we'll have you on the show here.
Yeah, awesome. So that is all for today, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've gotten some very useful takeaways from this episode, and be sure to check out Bryn's podcast, WA Real, on the web. So I will catch you all next time. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.